Now, if you've bought an SY99, one of the things you might want to do when you first get it is find out what's wrong with it. And one of the easiest ways to do that is to use the self-diagnostic test that comes with the synthesizer. So the first thing is, how do you get into the self-diagnostic test? Now, if you've done a factory reset, you'll probably know that because you used the diagnostic screens to actually perform the factory reset. But the way you do it is you press down the voice key, you press down the D key, and you press down the A key all together. And it will then change into system test version 1.1, which is what this screen displays. And I'm hoping this screen comes across on the overhead. And there are a number of options here. One option is this option here, which is to run the system test in auto. This option here is to run it in manual. This option here is, if you've done a factory reset, you'll know about it. This is how you do the factory reset. And then you use the exit key to exit out of this diagnostic mode. So that's how it works. So everything you need is here. Remember, like, comment, subscribe to the channel. Go over to Instagram and follow me there. Go over to Facebook, follow me there. That's where the normal notices are. And consider becoming a Patreon. So you've managed to get yourself into system diagnostic mode. What do? Well, I'm going to be honest with you. From my experience of using diagnostic mode on this machine, do not run it in auto. And the reason for that is it goes into an LCD test mode, and I can't seem to, on this particular machine, which is mine, I can't seem to recover out of it. So the only way I seem to be able to recover out of it is switching the power on, switching the power back off. So my advice is do not run it in auto mode, because it just kind of freezes around the LCD piece. So run it in manual mode, and to run it in manual mode you press the +1 yes key, like so. You're now ready to start running tests, and you can test a whole raft of stuff. To run a test, you select the test you want to run, you use the arrow keys to move up and down, and then when you get to the end of the screen it moves to the next screen. And I can't remember how many there are. In fact, there are 49 factory tests installed on the machine in diagnostic mode. I'm not going to run all 49 of them, but I am going to show you how to run some of the key ones that you might want to run. So, we're going to start with ROM. So as I said in the previous segment, you select which test you want to run. So I'm just going to run one to show you how you do it. You select the test, you press enter, and then the test is run. And if it comes back and says OK, you know it hasn't failed. I was going to say you know it's failed, but you know it hasn't failed. RAM right. There you go. It comes back OK. Sequencer ROM. Sequencer RAM. Now this one is quite important. If you want to know whether your SY99 needs its battery changed, you press that one. Now this one is reporting 3.1 volts. 3.1, 3.2 volts are absolutely fine for this. 2.8 volts, you need to change the battery. Okay, so that's the RAM battery. To move on to the next screen, as I say, 6 and 7 seem to do all kinds of weird things with my machine, but the machine works fine. I don't know what's the issue with those. So we're going to jump on to LED check. Now this is quite an important one, because it tells you whether all the lights are working or not. So let's just run that sequence. And as you can see, all the lights are changing across the keyboard. It's telling you what it's doing. And it says they're all on, then they're all off. Then it starts going with all the green lights, green LEDs I should say. And again it will do a all on, all off. Now you have to exit this one, so you hit exit to stop it. The next one, and this is another good one, especially if you think you've got some issues with the panel in terms of you're pressing the switches and nothing's working. This one will test. This is the panel switch test, and this one will go through, and it is laborious. Okay, so I'm not going to go all the way through, but it says press the voice button, right? Press the multi button, press the song button, press the pattern button, press the utility button, and it will then go through every button on this panel. And if you think you've got a button that's not working properly, obviously when you get to that button, it will fail the test. So again, I'm going to exit that because I know all my buttons work. The next test here, oh, hang on, got to exit, there you go. The next test here is about the pitch bend. So does the pitch bend work between the ranges the synthesizer is expecting? I'm not going to do that, but that's what it does. It's another important one. And then also you can test the two modulation wheels, which are the next tests 11 and 12. Data entry is all about this fader here. Our encoder is all about this jog wheel that sits here. Oops, don't want to do that. Gone too far. Keyboard check is about do the keys make contact, and it will start with one key and you will go all the way up the keyboard and check every single key, which is very useful if you've got dead keys like this one here, which might be just off camera. Aftertouch again, MIDI, you have to put a MIDI cable into, if I remember correctly, you have to put the MIDI cable into the in and into the out to do that test. But that will tell you whether the MIDI is working correctly. Then you've got the data card test, so you need data cards to be able to do that particular test. And that will now look at whether you can, if you insert it, it recognises it, so that tells you whether the data card port is good or not. It will then try to write to it, which is the next test, and it will then try to protect it, which is the next test. And whether your data card battery is good or not is also a test here. Then we repeat with the waveform cards, insert, read, and there's another test here, but again you will need a waveform card to be able to run those tests. And then we go to disk read and write. Now this is another good test to test whether your disk drive is good or not. And you will need a floppy for that. You will need a 720 KB. That's a double-sided, double-density floppy, or a double-density, double-sided, depending on which way around you look at that. And if you then go into that test, you can't do anything because there's no disk in it. So if I put a disk in it, like so, and I go enter, it's now going through a series of checks, and I'm going to be silent. I'm going to let it run through, but I'm going to speed this bit up. Right. So it's come back and said everything's okay, which is good. Disk eject, I'm not quite sure, I've never run this one. Eject the disk. Does it work? Yes. Then we've got a series of tests which are looking at the outputs, or the control outputs. So if you've got a breathe controller, it will allow you to test that. You will need a breathe controller for that, of course. A foot volume control, you'll need a foot volume control. A foot control, you'll need that. A sustain pedal, you'll need that. Just basic foot switch. And then we've got some frequency tests that actually run to speakers, so you'll need this plugged into your speakers, and then it will run and say, you know, can I put 1 kilohertz to the left, 1 kilohertz to the right, 1 kilohertz to the left on volume on output 2, 1 to the right, and etc, etc. So that's testing the outputs of the actual synthesizer. It is actually quite comprehensive, this test system. Then we actually look at can it actually send PCM waveforms to the effects and FM waveforms to the effects. Then it checks the PCM memory, which is always a good one to run. Let's put that on. Output on. Again, you will need that plugged into a output. I'm not going to do that, so I'm just going to exit that one. No, I still want to run through some of these tests. Let's go back. Then we've got some more tests about playing SM, feedbacks. Then we've got tests about clicking high and clicking low, setting all the jacks to off, doing a factory reset. So you can do a factory reset by running test number 49 as opposed to going straight to copy. And then we exit. The test mode. So as you can see, there are quite a lot of diagnostics that are actually built into the synth itself. I haven't run through all those diagnostics because it is laborious and it will take you some time. If I were to turn around and say that running that test cycle incomplete, it's going to be at least an hour of your time because you've got to let the tests all cycle through, and some of those tests take a minute or so to run the entire test. Okay, and you've got 49 of them, like 48 of them, let's be fair, because the factory reset is not really a test, but there's 48 tests there that you might want to run yourself through, and depending on the outputs you might want to run the test again. So that's how you run the diagnostic mode on the SY99, and believe me, if you think you've got a problem, the diagnostic mode is actually really good for pinpointing where that problem is. If you think you've got another problem that's not covered by the diagnostic mode, you know what? You're in there with a probe. And on that note, I'm going to say, live long and prosper, and I'll catch you on the next video.